Hey guys, Will Terry here, and this video is going to be called How I Became a Children's Book Illustrator. And what you're seeing right now is our bunny wall here at SVS. And we had a great open house the other night, and a lot of people sent in red rabbits. That's kind of our mascot. A lot of people wondering what's up with the red rabbits. But anyway, a ton of people sent them in. Some people did them here. We have more that have been sent in, emailed to us. If you're interested in doing one, we'd love to put it up on the wall. Just send it to me, will@willterry.com, and we'll print it and put it up there. Or you can send a physical one and just email it. Now that I think about it, the mail thing is kind of tough. But anyway, okay. All right. I'm thinking on the go here. I'm making policy during a video. That's not always the best thing to do. So what you're seeing here is a screen recording I did earlier today. This is an image that I made for a new class that's coming up called The Magic of Color. It's actually going to replace and enhance the working with color video that I have at svslearn.com. And so you're basically, this is your chance to draw on your iPad, or you can watch this kind of time lapse. I don't know how much I'm going to have to speed it up to kind of match this story that I'm going to tell you about how I became a children's book illustrator. But anyway, yeah, so that's going on, and I like to mix it up. I don't like to always do the same thing where I just kind of talk to the camera. So I'm doing this. If you like this, maybe I'll do more of these. And I might also add that the genesis of svslearn.com, which is actually Rev 3 of 3, was I did a speed painting probably 9 years ago, around 2008, and yeah, it's like 9 years ago. And one of my former students, I sped it up and put it on YouTube. And one of my former students said, "This is great and all, but we can't really learn from it. Why don't you talk over it and stuff?" So that's why I started making tutorials. I've also got allergies going on right now, so that's always great for making a video. It's like I don't have allergies all day long, and then it's like I'm allergic to the camera or something. And so so that started videos on my tutorials on my own site, and then from that gave rise to Folio Academy and now svslearn.com. And so if you really want to see my process on how I paint digitally, you can, in Photoshop, you can look on svslearn.com for my 10-step digital painting class, and I'll put a link to that below. And so, yeah, but I'm just having this play right now so you can see kind of how I'm working. And I'm going to tell you the story of how I became a children's book illustrator. And the reason I want to do that in this video is I've had so many questions, and I've talked about it before, but I don't think I've ever really kind of told the whole story. And I think a lot of times that people want to know the backstory on how someone is doing maybe something that they want to do because they want to see if it applies to their life, and that, which is a totally valid way of doing it. So hopefully this helps some of you guys out there. I will start out by saying that no matter what, there are many, probably as many stories of getting into children's books as there are children's book illustrators. So my story is going to be quite a bit different than the next children's book illustrators, but there will be some similarities, and it might give you ideas on what you can do to get into it. So anyway, before I do that, I am going to tell you one more thing, and that is that my most recent book, and this is October 2017, Bonaparte Falls Apart. And I know I mentioned this. Look, you guys, I'm so excited about this. This book was published by Penguin Random House under the imprint of Crown Books for Young Readers. And Marjorie Kyler is such a great author, and she's a pretty cool woman. And she is so excited about this book too, because it's blowing up on Amazon right now. It's doing really well. And other bookstores like in Barnes & Noble. People have sent me tons of photos. I'm like shaking the book at you, like, look at it. But it's really an exciting thing when you have a book that's doing well. It's on prominent aisles and on like the Halloween table in Barnes & Nobles, and other local bookstores. I keep getting photos where people are. Someone saw it in some station in San Francisco. Anyway, I really hope it does well, because if it does, I get to do the sequel. If it doesn't, it probably won't. So, and I absolutely loved working on that book and would love to work with those characters again in a different story. So, I'm a little excited. You got to forgive me, but it's cool when you have a book that does really well. And I've had books that have done really well before, but not when I had the internet to actually distract me during the day, so I can go on Amazon and check the sales rank and stuff like that, which is shameful, because it's like I should just forget about it and see what it does, but it's exciting. Okay, so let's just start off with let's start out with the story of like how you become a children's book illustrator. For me, I never set out to become a children's book illustrator. Excuse me. I didn't really set out to do anything. I kind of fell. I mean, I went to art school, and I didn't think that I was going to be. I didn't think I'd ever make it. So I never planned for this career, because I didn't think it was even possible. Because I thought that, everybody told us how hard it is to break into illustration. There were 20 people in our class. Only one of you, percentage-wise, 5%, will ever do anything with it, if that. And so that I looked around and I'm like, am I the 1 out of 20 people? I'm not very good at math, but I do know that 1 out of 20 is 5%. And I didn't have I wasn't arrogant enough to think that I was the one. But there wasn't anything else for me to do when I finished school, so I started putting a portfolio together and sending it out and showing it. And the first work that I started doing was editorial work for magazines. And I was doing like a lot of really dumb, stupid illustrations that just they weren't me. The business people, the little concept illustrations of little people and big objects, and kind of the Brad Holland style, which was really popular at the time. And then I started, after a few years of that, I started to really get sick of it, even though I was making really good money doing it. It's funny that as an artist, we want freedom, and then we go for the job that's easier, that kind of locks down our freedom, and we ended up having to do illustrations that we're not that excited about. And I think the sign is when you're not looking forward to the piece of art that you have to make, you need to be switching what you're doing. You need to change it up, because that's a dead end road. I mean, like, you can only handle that so long. It's funny. I think people would rather do a job that they really don't care about, where they can daydream, where their mind can go numb, than having an employer purchase their mental powers as well. Like I don't just own your body. You can't leave work, and also I own your mind at the same time. And those are the hardest jobs to stay in. Those are the hardest ones to. It's just they're not long lasting. The longevity is just not there. And so if you're doing that, you're gonna end up switching anyway. So you might as well start to switch to something you like. And I kind of saw that happening to me. And so in my free time, I started making children's book illustrations. I wasn't really thinking they were children's book illustrations so much as they were illustrations that were really fun to me. But they were kind of a whimsical nature, and they could have worked for children's books. It's weird, I know. And what's funny is when I teach at the university, I noticed that a lot of my students, the male students, when I mention, you could be a children's book illustrator, they're like, no, that's not going to happen for me. It's like a lot of the guys are have an aversion to it, when really children's books are so diverse that you could find children's books where you could be painting almost anything that you want, based on, like, the subject matter is so varied, and it's so liberating that it's a great place for illustrators to end up. That being said, I'll kind of stop with the preachy thing on that, but basically that's what I was doing. I was making these little portfolio pieces, and I started sending them to my rep, and my rep was like, yeah, but the thing is, you make money with these other ones, these little people business suit type paintings. And I was like, well, I know, but I have more fun doing this other thing. And my rep, Joanne Schunan at the time, great lady, great rep, and was she was sympathetic to that, and she said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then I'm going to help you do that. And that's rare, I think. I think a lot of times when people are playing the power broker role, they tend to try to dictate how the people they manage are going to behave and act. And I think that's natural, because I just assume this, and I could be wrong, but to me, most of the people that go into business to be a representative of other artists or other sport, even athletes, actors, they to me, they seem like they are kind of power hungry, and they kind of are controlling, those type of people. But she wasn't. So, and by the way, I hope you're drawing, because this is a long story. Okay, you guys know that I tend to run on. I still get the comments like, man, dude, like, wrap this up in 5 minutes. This is not your video, man. This is not for you. I mean, I appreciate that you have other things to do. And Jeff, you're one of the ones I'm talking to. I love you, but I'm a rambler, man. I like to tell stories. And you should be drawing anyway, right? And maybe you look at the screen every now and then. I'm still painting over here. So she started sending that stuff out, and then lo and behold, boom, I started getting some work with it. I didn't know if it was possible, but the cool thing about the editorial work for magazines and newspapers is that it was so varied that it wasn't just, I had this impression, like, if I'm not doing the conceptual stuff, that the narrative stuff isn't there. And there were a lot of narrative stories that I was able to start telling. Like, a lot of magazines would have a story at the end of the magazine that would be kind of an anecdotal little story, and they'd want just a one-off illustration. So I got started with those. Now, for those of you who are using this as like, well, maybe this could be me, maybe I can follow in your footsteps. Unfortunately, those footsteps have kind of evaporated in some ways. Those footsteps lead into the water. Editorial is basically gone now. I mean, it's a fraction of what it was. And that's simply because of the internet. The internet is a new technology. It came in, it changes things, it wipes some things out, and it creates other opportunities. So I've shifted to where I used to do illustrations for editorial. Now some of my extra time goes to making illustrations that I can sell at conventions. It's just a shift, and you have to be able to look for those markets that shift. But that's not what this is about. We're going to stay on track and stay with the story. So that started happening, and then like about a year later, I got this agent, this woman that wanted to rep me, and I said, well, I've already got a rep. And at that time, there was the idea that you could have more than one rep. This is back in the late 90s, dating myself. And you could. Some people had more than one rep, which it can create problems for sure. But my rep was not working and going for children's books. She was going for advertising, which I was getting. And by the way, I did like children's book type illustrations for some of my advertising clients. And I've got one here. Let's see if you can see this, for like the Yankee Candle Company. This is like the box that they would put the candles in. And so one Christmas, I got to paint this. This is not even digital. This was before I went digital. So that's an acrylic painting right there. And so I did a lot of stuff like this. I did some stuff for FedEx and for Pepsi, and those jobs, M&M Mars, those jobs paid amazingly well. Like one job for M&M Mars I got a little over $40,000 for it. I also did a couple of board games. I did this 1313 Dead End Drive for Parker Brothers. And it's a crappy game, by the way. So if you ever see it, don't buy it. I don't get a royalty anyway. They made sure of that. So I don't have any skin in the game on you buying this stupid game. It was too complicated. It was 13 Dead End Drive, and then they re-released it into 13 Dead End Drive, which the idea was that it was too complex, so they wanted to do a remake and simplify it. And me and my kids and my wife sat around when we got our first copy. We were so excited. We got on the kitchen table, and setting it up took like a half an hour. And my kids were like, "We're out of here." So me and my wife and one of my kids tried to play it, and I don't think we've even finished it. It was stupid. It was supposed to be like Clue, like the game Clue, but yeah, it was dumb. So anyway, and I also did a game for Seco called Tiki Topple and a few others, and those were fun, a lot of fun, and I think I'm losing my train of thought. But okay, so yeah, I was doing those kinds of illustrations, and then, I'm just gonna show you this stack of books over here, so you'll know what I'm reaching for. But this is like almost all the books I've done in my career, and there's a bunch of them there. They're not all here because I've done a lot of little readers that I don't have down here at the studio for Simon Schuster. But I am going to show you, let's see if I can find it in here. I want to show you my first book that I ever did, and that is Pizza Pat. So what happened with this book? So this is really my first children's book, other than the one I did, and now it's at the bottom of the stack. Darn it! Sorry about that. Oh well, I thought I had it, but I don't have it down here. But it's a book that I did right out of college, and I didn't really count that as my first children's book because I had no idea what I was doing. But my first real one was Pizza Pat. And what happened with this one is my agent, the woman who wanted to rep me, but I had another rep. This is getting confusing. She basically said this rep that reps children's books said, "Well, what if I just got you a job, but we weren't like officially signed up, so your rep wouldn't see you on my website or anything like that, and it won't be official, but you'll just be doing this side job if I can get you one." I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm open to any possibilities that could be out there." And so I think it was about 6 months later, boom, here comes Pizza Pat. And I just turned it down. I was making way too much money doing advertising and editorial. I was keeping track of my jobs back then in the late 90s, and I was getting about 20 different freelance assignments a month on average. And then it kicked up beyond that to where I was getting more like 30 to 35 per month, but I could only do about 20. So I was turning down 10 or 15 assignments. And I mean, I thought I was on top of the world. I thought I the money was just flowing in, making well over six figures. And I just thought, man, this is the life, like they said this was going to be hard, and it was so much easier. So I turned down Pizza Pat because it paid $7,000, but with my rep taking her cut, I was going to end up with about $5,000 for this book, this little step into reading book by Random House. And I turned it down, and then they came back and said, "Well, what if we gave you like 9 months?" Because I think at first they offered like 6 months, and I said no. And then they were smart, and they said, "Well, how much time would you need?" And I'm like, I don't know. And I just threw out a number. I was really brand new. I was like in my fourth year as an illustrator. And I just said, "How about a year and a half?" And they're like, "Okay." And I was like, dang it. They got me because now I can't say no. So I said yes. The funny thing is, out of that whole stack of books that I showed you, I have made more money off of this one than any of my other books singly. This book has sold, I'm going to say, I've kind of stopped keeping track, but it's somewhere around 600,000 or 700,000 copies. It's crazy. and it might be more than that now. Now I'm only getting like, oh, there's like a burn. There's like something on this book. It got burned or something. That's weird. Look at the nose. There's like damage on his nose. That's really weird. Like somebody put a cigarette out on his nose. Pizza Pat abuse. Anyway, yeah. So I've probably gotten. I never mind talking figures because I know it's important to people. But this one I got paid in royalties. So I got about the $5,000 up front, and I thought, well, I'll never see any royalties. And I ended up getting well over $50,000 over time on that one, and so that it took me about 2 to 2.5 months to paint at a leisurely pace, to draw it and to do the whole thing. And so that was time really well spent. So then after that, I didn't get a children's book for quite a while. I think it was about 3 or 4 years, and I wasn't really trying because I was still making really good money with the advertising and the editorial. And then I got a new rep, because I really wanted to get into children's books, and I it's like I started having kids. I didn't, my wife did, and I just thought, well, it would be really. We were reading Pizza Pat to our kids, and I'm like, I should do more children's books. Plus, I was getting to the point where I realized what the market was, and I realized that it was more fun, and I could have more freedom, and I could do more of what I wanted to do. So I signed up with a different rep, Shannon Associates. And by the way, I made a video about how our nasty little breakup, and how it didn't go so well. And I'll link that below too if I can remember. But anyway, so I ended up getting my first real picture book, because the other one, this is a little crappy reader. This is like, in the children's book world, if you're doing these, you don't have any clout. Like you don't, like with the publishers are like, yeah, sure, you did these little readers and all, but you're not like a rock star in the publishing world at all. I'm still not a rock star, although I do play the bass a little bit now. But yeah, you're not, like, picture books is like, that's where the prestige comes in. And with picture books, you don't get full prestige unless you're also authoring them, which I'm not. So there you go. How can you be a rock star if you're like only doing half the thing, right? So, but this was with Albert Whitman, and I decided to just go for broke and just really try to knock this one out and do the best I could. And this one has done really, really well. I've made not quite as much money on this one over time as Pizza Pat, but I've done really well. Again, for the time put in, and the advance was bigger. And yeah, so, and this one's still in print. Some of my books aren't in print anymore. Just like this one, this Christmas Troll, which was a really dumb story, a dumb book, but I had a lot of fun illustrating it. So I got a bunch of books here. I don't really know exactly where to go. I did more readers, and this is another step into reading. So I've done a bunch of these. I did a whole series called the Anthill series, or the Anthill, what's it called? It's like, well, I don't know what this, yeah, Anthill, it says it right there. Oops, right there, Anthill, backwards. So I did 7 of those for Scholastic. And then, I don't know, I've just kept doing book after book after book. But some of the things that I can tell you is, that you may not have known is, like this, I did this Senorita Gordita, and it's also with Helen Ketterman. I did another book that's done really well is The Three Little Gators by Helen Ketterman. They like, in the publishing world, they like to pair an author and illustrator together and try to create a franchise with you. And so if it's working, they try not to break it up. They're like, ooh, that combination worked. So Armadillo Chili did really well. This one did really well. We also did, this was a really fun one. also by Helen Ketterman. There Once Was a Cowpoke Who Swallowed an Ant, and I had a lot of fun illustrating that one. What else? Hopefully, so Marjorie and I are doing books because years back I did this Skeleton for Dinner with Marjorie Kyler. Different publisher. This was Albert Whitman, and the Bonaparte book is Random House. So that's kind of cool, switching houses with the same team, and Marjorie's edited for all the big publishers as well. I got to do this really fun book called Nasty Bugs with Lee Bennett Hopkins. And I have a bunch of others over here. This is, well, oh yeah. See, here's another book that's out of print that I really liked working on, The Treasure of Ghostwood Gully by Marcia Vaughn, but it just didn't sell all that great, and so they discontinued it. So your book will go out of print if it's not selling enough, and luckily most of my books are still in print. But it is sad when they get retired, and then you get to buy them for like $2 or $3 each from the publisher, and then you have books that you can sell when you go places. This was another one. This one in the Scholastic Book Club. These can make you a lot of money. This one so far hasn't, and I doubt that it will because it's like 4 or 5 years old now, and I think it would have already started selling well. But it went, it was in the book clubs, and I got a good advance on this. So the good thing is if you get a good advance, you kind of feel like, well, you got paid. But you really are. To me, one of the reasons why I do children's books is not only because it's fun, but also because it really does have that chance of if it takes off, you go along with it because you own a chunk of the IP. No matter what happens, you own a piece of this property, and when it's for sale and as it sells, your royalties accumulate. Now, I know I'm going to get the question: how do they figure out royalties? I've talked about this in other videos, but I think I'll go ahead and mention it in this one. Is that the publishers will typically give you an advance, and I get questions sometimes where people will say, "Well, I'm getting a deal with a publisher, but they don't have enough money to give me an advance. Should I still do it?" So maybe I'll tackle that. Let me tackle the first part: is like what is the advance and how the royalties work. Let's say that you get your first picture book and the publisher offers you $10,000, and that's you're going to get. You'll get a third when you sign the contract, and then, well, you're supposed to get a third when you sign the contract. The publishing world pays late; they just do. So you're going to end up getting, you're going to get paid probably a month or two after you sign the contract, and then when you turn in your sketches, you'll get paid another third. And then when you turn in your final artwork, you'll get paid another third. Sometimes they'll just pay you half after you do sketches and half after you turn in finished artwork. Most will not pay you the full advance before you've done any of the work. However, when you do a book series like that Anthill series, and I'm not going to dig it out again, on that one they contracted me to do all 7 books. Actually, I think I had a first contract to do 3 books and then a second contract to do 4. And I didn't know how it worked. And so I signed the contract and I didn't read anything. And all of a sudden I get this huge check in the mail. And they basically paid me the advance for all 4 books. And so I had to do 4 books, but I kind of had to hang on to that money and be really good with that money because I was going to have to work these other books into my schedule and not get paid for them unless they earned royalties, right? So that was kind of an interesting thing to learn about. So the way the royalties work is you get an advance, $10,000, let's say. Now, some people get a lot more than that. I know people that get $20,000. I know people that get $40,000. I get more than $10,000 now. When I first started, it was right around $9,000 or $10,000. Now it's substantially higher, but I do know people that get 50. I know people that get 100,000. I know people that have gotten way more than 100,000 advance for a children's book, but their books are selling like New York Times bestsellers list, or they're Caldecott winners, or they're just super popular author illustrators who are selling a ton of books. If they're that, they're New York Times bestsellers. So, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to get that kind of advance. Anyway, so you get the advance, and then you don't earn any royalties until your royalties add up to the amount of your advance. So if you get $10,000 and let's say you're getting 50 cents a book, every book deal is different. Some contracts want to pay you on the net sales. Others want to pay you on the gross. And you really want to be paid on the retail price of the book, the gross. You don't want to be paid on the net sales because then you're going to get 5%. 5% is pretty standard, except on there's a lot of complicated things. Like on these little reading books, often you're only going to get 3% royalties. Like on these, I got a 5% on that one, but these are often like 3%. It's just the way they work it. And at 3% on that Pizza Pat book, I've earned more money at 3% than I have at 5% on my other books. So you at 5%, let's just do math and make it really easy. Let's say you're getting 5% of retail, and the author's also getting 5% of retail. And if you're author illustrator, you get all 10%. But let's say you're getting 5% and the book sells for $15. And so 5% of $15 is 75 cents. So you're going to get yourself 75 cents every single time they sell one of those books. So if they sell 1,000 books, gosh, now I just worked myself into a hole here. How much is that? I'm going to get the calculator out because I don't want to say this wrong. 0.75 times 1,000 equals $750. Okay, those are that are good at math. I already knew that. So 10,000 would be 7,500. 100,000 would be $75,000. So you can see, like, you can make really good money. 100,000 books, that's not that many, right? I mean, it's a lot of books. My Pizza Pat book is sold over 500,000, like 600 or 700,000. But that was once, and that's the little reader. And those things go in the Pizza Pat was in that little newsprint catalog thing that kids bring home to read. They say to their mom, I've got to buy some books so I can learn to read. It was in there forever, and it sold that way like crazy. It was in all the stores too. But you have to remember too, on that little book, it's a $4 book, and that's why I didn't earn anywhere near what I would have earned on a picture book selling for, because these are like $3.99 list price. So, yeah, you get your royalties, right? And then now I've lost my train of thought on where I was going to go with the other story, but YouTube's free. You're not paying for this, so you got a deal. Maybe it'll come to me. Anyway, that's kind of how the royalty thing works. And, you know, I'm just trying to give you guys a little insight into how this whole thing works. That sucks that I lost my train of thought. I need to keep a notepad and take notes. I did this cool castle book. I'm going to distract you with that right now. This has got tons of pieces in here, and you make a castle with this book. It's a Klutz book, part of the Chicken Sock series. Anyway, what does this say? This is not a book about castles. It is a castle, you idiot. Look at that. Okay. There's that. Do I have any other cool books to talk about? Sometimes your books do well enough that they put them in a different language. I think this is Portuguese. If you know, then tell me in the comments. Also, I've illustrated some of these little chapter books with little illustrations inside. So this one has, let's see if I can find right here. That's a dumb illustration. The illustrator they hired for that one. Oh crap, that was me. Let's see. Oh, I kind of like this one. It's hard to get right for the camera. It's just like spooky stories in here. So these can pay really well too, because you're just doing a cover and then like some black and whites on the inside. I did a Dr. Fell book. I don't have any copies of that yet. They haven't sent me they call them author copies, even though I'm the illustrator. And that just reminds me, I need to contact Random House and say, where's my author copies on? Maybe they're watching this. Like, I really would like the Dr. Fell. That book is doing really well too. Dr. Fell. It's a little novel, like a YA novel. So what else can I tell you that's valuable about how I became a children's book? I mean, like that's the thing is I got a rep, and I have talked about reps before on this channel. So if you really want to learn about reps, go back in my titles and kind of search Will Terry and reps. I don't want to find it and link it for you. It's late. I don't want to get this video out, but these days, the publishing houses are really looking for or looking to agents and reps to do their bidding. And basically, rather than having to go out and find illustrators all the time, a lot of times they like to go and talk to the agents and the reps and look on rep websites like Shannon Associates, because they've got a lot of good talent there, and those illustrators are usually proven and tested. They don't want to give a nice picture book assignment to someone who's never done one. It's that weird thing where if you haven't done one, we don't want to hire you. We only want to hire people that have done books. How do I get hired to do a book? You need to already have books that you've illustrated. So in some ways it's like a club, but the reason for that is these guys are gambling on you. They're gambling tens of thousands of dollars. It could take $50,000 to $100,000 to publish a children's book. They're not going to just risk that on anybody. So they want to make sure that you're reliable, that you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and you're going to do it as well as you possibly can, and you're not going to deviate from the plan, which is your portfolio. So you're going to illustrate right from the things that you've been sending in and showing them, so they don't get any surprises. That you're not going to phone it in and just decide, well, I don't really care about this project. I mean, like a children's book, the attitude you have to have, and I didn't have this when I first started, because I didn't fully understand the commitment that you need to have. But you have to illustrate kind of like your life depends on it. You have to be willing to, you have to be willing to give everything you have and then some. And sometimes that's not as much. Like sometimes a book will actually work out really easily for you, and other times it takes a lot of redoing sketches, and it takes a lot of yourself saying, you know what, I can do better than this. I'm going to throw that illustration out. I'm not even going to send it to the publisher because this is my book. I care about this book. And sure, I'm getting paid to do it, but I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life. So I'm going to put my all into it, and I'm going to take ownership of this thing. And that's who they want to pay. That's who they want to hire. And some people think they have that commitment level, but they don't have it. And I think you'll know when you have that kind of commitment level, when you're willing to do a ton of illustration on your own to flesh out a portfolio that is stellar. And we're here at SVS. We got a really heartfelt letter the other day where someone basically said, I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing all the stuff you told me to do, Will and Jake and Lee, and I'm not getting work. And so I called Jake over. We had been in this office for probably 3 or 4 days, and I said, you got to read this letter. And I said, okay, let's look at the portfolio together and see if this person is who he says he is. If he's, or if he's blowing smoke, and sometimes we're blowing smoke and we don't know it, to be fair and to be honest. The portfolio was underwhelmed. I mean, it was underwhelming. It's good work, but it's not. And what we're going to do in a third Thursday discussion coming up probably before the end of the year is talk about that very letter without mentioning it. He didn't want us to use his letter, and I don't. That's fine. We're gonna talk about the ideas though, and that is that basically the gist is there is a gap between when you're good and when you're great, and getting through that gap to greatness is kind of where you need to be in order to be able to just get hired. Now there are people that are doing a lot of illustration work that aren't great, but there are a lot of people who are doing really, really good illustration work who aren't getting hired because they're either not making themselves available enough, or they're unlucky. That's part of the thing too, where the job goes to someone else and it could have gone to you, but they just happened to pick one of the other 10 illustrators they were looking at. There's more of us than there are assignments, and so we really want to drill down on that and really hammer home the idea of how you get to the level where you are indispensable. You have to make yourself indispensable in this world. If you are replaceable, you'll be replaced. Or when you get work, it will be because of luck. Not because you were needed, but because you happen to be in the right place at the right time. And that's not a way to build your career. You've got to make yourself indispensable. You don't have to do it overnight. That's the good news is you have time. You have a lifetime. I feel like I'm still improving. Each year I feel like I'm doing better work than the year before. Now, you guys may look at my portfolio and not see that, but that's how I feel. I feel like I'm getting better. So, anyway, that's about it. I know I didn't talk about this painting that's rendering right now, or that's sped up right now, but it is a fun idea. And again, this is a cover. There's going to be a cover for the class that I'm going to put on our website. It's getting late. My voice is starting to crap out, so I think I'm going to bow out of here too. And just tell you, I'm really glad that you guys watch. I love the comments. I love the connections that I make when I go to events and I meet some of you guys that are subscribers. That's my story on how I became a children's book illustrator. Go out there and make great art.